Thank you all for joining. I'm not as prepared as I want to be today, so I would really ask for your tolerance, your blessings as I go through this verse. We'll get started. Om Ajnanatimrandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasade Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So this is Srimad Bhagavatam 1.9.18. And before I actually get started with the verse, I think I'll just do a quick summary as to where of the last few verses, where the whole thing is about the end of the battle of Kurukshetra and Yudhishthira Maharaj being in deep sorrow and deep lamentation because of the war and all the destruction that it has caused, all the thousands and thousands of men who've been killed, wives who are now left without husbands, children who are left without fathers, and thus without any protection. So he is in deep lamentation, and he is being asked to be the king and to take up that responsibility of actually protecting his citizens, his subjects. And he is lamenting and saying, see, I've caused Pandavas have caused all this destruction. Everybody is left without protection. It's going to be such an inconvenience for me. I don't think they even want me to be their king. So he's not lamenting in essence for himself, but he's lamenting for his subjects, for his citizens, saying that it'll just be a total inconvenience. How can they ever accept me as king when I have caused all this destruction? So Bhishma Dev is then trying to pacify him and trying to tell him that this is not caused by the Pandavas. This is not caused by you and the rest of the Pandavas. It is not caused by your karma, because whenever you go through any reversals in life, you actually look at it through the lens of, this is what I heard in Guru Maharaj and Rompad Maharaj's lecture. You actually look at it through the lens of three principles. And in all those three principles, you've actually passed, So those three principles that Bhishma Dev said, he should look at, Yudhishthira Maharaj should look at this whole battle is: one, if you've done everything for the pleasure of Krishna, and yes, you did not fight the war, or the Pandavas did not fight the war. In fact, they did not want to fight the war. They fought it on the instruction of Krishna. So that principle they've ticked off. They've done it for the pleasure of Krishna. Second principle is, if you're living according to theistic conduct. And Bhishma Dev said, even in ordinary dealings, Pandavas always follow scriptural principles, scriptural injunctions, and theistic code. So he said, you have nothing to worry or lament about there either. And the third principle is, you always live your life according to the instructions of Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, and you seek their knowledge, you seek their counsel. And there as well, Bhishma Dev said, you always seek counsel of the Draupa and all the other ministers before you actually go ahead and do anything in life. So you've ticked that as well. So you have nothing to lament about. This has not come about by your karma. This is entirely the plan of the Lord. This is time. There was a whole discussion on time when Premanand Mathaji gave a beautiful class. It's all about time. Just as the wind moves the clouds, time moves events. So, and that time is also Krishna. So that's also under the control of Krishna, and it's a plan of Krishna. So he the last verse he ends by telling Yudhishthira, there is no need for you to lament. Please get up and do your duty. Do what Krishna is telling you to do, and start protecting your citizens, because right now they don't have any protection. And in this verse, he's actually turning to Krishna. Bhishma Dev is turning to Krishna and speaking to Krishna with his arms raised. And the verse that he speaks is this 1:9:18. So we'll get into this verse. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Esavai Eshavai Bhagavan Sakshad Adhyo Narayana Puman Mohayan Mayaya Lokam Gudhash Chariti Vrishnishu. Just a second. Okay. Translation. This Sri Krishna is no other than the inconceivable original personality of Godhead. He is the first Narayana, the supreme enjoyer. But he is moving amongst the descendants of King Vrishni, just like one of us, and he is bewildering us with his self-created energy. So, purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The Vedic system of acquiring knowledge is the deductive process. The Vedic knowledge is received perfectly by disciplic succession from authorities. Such knowledge is never dogmatic, as ill-conceived by less intelligent persons. The mother is the authority to verify the identity of the father. She is the authority for such confidential knowledge. Therefore, authority is not dogmatic. In the Bhagavad Gita, this truth is confirmed in the second verse of the 4th chapter, and the perfect system of learning is to receive it from authority. The very same system is accepted universally as truth, but only the false arguer speaks against it. For example, modern spacecraft fly in the sky, and when scientists say that they travel to the other side of the moon, men believe these stories blindly because they have accepted the modern scientists as authorities. The authorities speak and the people in general believe them. But in the case of Vedic truths, they have been taught not to believe. Even if they accept them, they give a different interpretation. Each and every man wants a direct perception of Vedic knowledge, but foolishly they deny it. This means that the misguided man can believe one authority, the scientist, but will reject the authority of the Vedas. The result is that people have degenerated. Here is an authority speaking about Sri Krishna as the original personality of Godhead and the first Narayana. Even such an impersonalist as Acharya Shankara has said in the beginning of his commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita that Narayana, the personality of Godhead, is beyond the material creation. The universe is one of the material creations, but Narayana is transcendental to such material paraphernalia. Bhishmadev is one of the 12 Mahajans who know the principles of transcendental knowledge. His confirmation of Lord Sri Krishna's being the original personality of Godhead is also corroborated by the impersonalist Shankara. All other acharyas have also confirmed this statement, and thus there is no chance of not accepting Lord Sri Krishna as the original personality of Godhead. Bhishmadev says that he is the first Narayana. This is also confirmed by Brahmaji in the Bhagavatam 10.14.14. Krishna is the first Narayana. In the spiritual world, Vaikuntha, there are unlimited number of Narayanas who are all the same personality of Godhead and are considered to be the plenary expansions of the original personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. The first form of the Lord Sri Krishna first expands himself as the form of Baladev, and Baladev expands in so many other forms such as Sankarshna, Pradumna, Aniruddha, Vasudeva, Narayana, Purusha, Rama, and Narsimha. All these expansions are one and the same Vishnu Tattva, and Sri Krishna is the original source of all the plenary expansions. He is therefore the direct personality of Godhead. He is the creator of the material world, and he is the predominating deity known as Narayana in all the Vaikuntha planets. Therefore, his movement amongst human beings are another sort of bewilderment. The Lord therefore says in the Bhagavad Gita that foolish persons consider him to be one of the human beings without knowing the intricacies of his movements. The bewilderment regarding Sri Krishna is due to the action of his twofold internal and external energies upon the third one, called marginal energy. The living entities are expansions of the marginal energy, and thus they are sometimes bewildered by the internal energy and sometimes by the external energy. By internal energetic bewilderment, Sri Krishna expands himself into unlimited number of Narayanas and exchanges or accepts transcendental loving service from the living entities in the transcendental world. And by his external energetic expansions, he incarnates himself in the material world amongst the men, animals, or demigods to re-establish his forgotten relation with the living entities in different species of life. Great authorities like Bhishma, however, escape his bewilderment by the mercy of the Lord. I think there are 3 different paragraphs in this purport that Srila Prabhupada had said, where Bhishma Dev is saying that Sri Krishna is the inconceivable original personality of Godhead, and he's the first Narayana, the supreme enjoyer, but he's moving amongst the descendants of King Vishnu, just like one of us, and he's bewildering us with his self-created energy. So the first paragraph talks about the importance and the power of hearing in disciplic succession. Second paragraph talks about Krishna being the first Narayana. And the third paragraph, third paragraph talks about how we are bewildered, because even though he is the original Narayana, he is the cause of all causes, he is the source of everything, he still moves around, in the material world amongst men. So that is bewildering to humans, and why that is why that bewilderment comes about is explained in the third paragraph. So when it comes to the power of disciplic succession, it is very important that we actually hear from the right source. Now, how do we know? That's what the scriptures, everywhere we hear that, and in all lectures we hear that we should hear from the right source. We should pick the right person to hear from. If we don't, then the consequences are very, very detrimental, because we'll be led down a completely wrong path. And like we know right now, there are so many different people who say they are God men, so-called God men, and they speak all kinds of nonsense. And there are so many, and I'm so I'm always wondering how these people, they have an audience. When these people, like I don't want to mention his name, but he speaks about physics and chemistry and biology and all kinds of nonsense, and there are people in the audience sitting and cheering for him. So at that is the time when I really feel so much gratitude for having been brought into this movement, where we really are hearing from the right source. And how do we know that we're hearing from the right source? We know that how do we pick for instance, the right spiritual master? I've heard Rompand Maharaj say that at least 2 things that we should really look for is to see whether the person who you're hearing from is living his life according to the scriptures, and he's repeating exactly what is in the scriptures, not making up stuff or concocting stuff and saying that. And for that, we also need to kind of study the Bhagavad Gita and understand what the qualifications of a speaker should be, understand what the qualifications of the receiver of that message should be. Because one is choosing the right speaker. The second is, of course, having the right submission to listen to his message, the right goal in mind when you're listening to that message. And the goal is always to get closer to Krishna, is ultimately, that is our goal. So we do everything to get to that goal. Without a goal, we go nowhere. So that is our ultimate goal, keeping that goal in mind, picking the right spiritual master, having the right submissive attitude, hearing in disciplic succession. So I think those are the keys, and that's what we really should be working towards. And then a lot of the battle for us will be won. And not only hearing though, but the next step is we should apply. And we should apply, so that when we apply what we hear, then we slowly get realizations. And when we get realizations, our faith, we start with initial faith, but when we hear, and we hear with submission, and we apply what we hear, then we get realizations that further strengthen our faith. And all of this will happen, or a transfer. See, when we hear from sources that are not in disciplic succession, we get information from them. And maybe we hear from people who are really, really good orators and who for that moment, or for a few, or maybe a day or so after we hear them, and not even a day or so, but less than that, maybe even after we hear the message, because they've orated it so well, because they're so dramatic, that we might still say, oh wow, that was such a good lecture, that was such a good speech. But there's no transformation of heart that happens with that. Whereas when you hear from, just like what's happening in the case of Yudhishthira Maharaj and Bhishma Dev, to bring it back to context, what's happening there is that Yudhishthira Maharaj is totally in lamentation. He's totally upset, but Bhishma Dev, from what Bhishma Dev told him, because of the purity of Bhishma Dev and because of the submissiveness of Yudhishthira and his belief and his faith in Bhishma Dev himself, in the speaker himself, he was able to come out of that lamentation. And it was no ordinary lamentation. I mean, he was totally, he just didn't want anything to do with becoming a king. He was totally distraught with everything that had happened. So that transformation of heart will happen when we're hearing in disciplic succession, which is when we're hearing from the right source. And Rumpad Maharaj was also talking about another example where Queen Kunti, when she was so distraught about where her sons were and where is Bhima, she goes to Vidura and says, where is Bhima? Where's my son? I'm worried. Where is he? She was totally, as a mother, totally emotional at that stage. And then Vidura said, I'm sure that your son, or that Bhima is fine, because, and how do I know that? Because Vyasadeva said that your sons are invincible. So even and as soon as Queen Kunti heard that intense emotion was calmed, because she knew that she was hearing from the right source. She had the confidence in that source, and it came from Srila Vyasadeva to Vidura to Queen Kunti in that descending. So it's descending knowledge, as opposed to the ascending knowledge that we have in academics. And unfortunately, people in general have more faith, like Prabhupada is saying in this purport, have more faith in what scientists say than what the Vedas say. I mean, it's just the nature of this material world, I guess. It's just our conditioning, that we are willing to accept all kinds of scientific knowledge. Man went to the moon, etc., etc. Whereas we are not willing to accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We always have, just a lot of questions, a lot of questioning, and a lot of speculation that arises because of that. Not even willing sometimes to put that little faith to try out the process. There are so many people, I see that, they say, we have only one life to live. We don't even know what is on the other side. So why don't we just live this life the way we want to live it? So they're not even willing to pick up the scriptures. The scriptures will tell you what's lying on the other side, that life is just a preparation for what's on the other side. But they're not even willing to do that. So from all of this, I think when I was preparing for the class, just the feeling that I was getting is just how fortunate we all are. For just, it seems like we're all under this protection. Of course, certain times, that visual that I have in my mind is just that we are all in this bubble with our spiritual masters, with all of the devotees in Disciplic Succession, with Krishna, with Narasimhadev, just under their protection. It is when we choose to open that door and go outside of the bubble, do we remember the protection that we have? Do we remember the teachings? Do we live by those three principles? That is what we need to concentrate on. And I think if we live by those three principles, that we live according to theistic conduct, we do everything for the pleasure of Krishna, and we always live life according to the instructions of the spiritual master, and then we are completely protected, whether inside or outside of the bubble. So that's, I think, about disciplic succession. And then the next paragraph speaks about Bhishma Dev is saying that Krishna is the original personality of Godhead. He's the first Narayana. And they're all, everybody, I mean, even an impersonalist like Acharya Shankara has said in the Bhagavad Gita that Narayana is beyond this material creation. Okay, even though he is in this material creation, he is transcendental to everything in that material. He is not touched by the material creation. And Krishna is the original Narayana, and there are a number of Narayanas in each of the other planets, but Krishna is the source. Just like in Brahma's Brahma Samhita says Sarva Karana Karanam, Ishvara Parama Krishna. So it says that even Brahma says that he is the original personality of Godhead. He is the cause of all causes. There is nothing before him. There is everything originates from Krishna. So here Bhishma Dev is glorifying Krishna as well as establishing the supremacy of Krishna. And then he also speaks about the other expansions, the plenary expansions of Krishna, like all the Narayanas are the plenary expansions of Krishna, and the other forms such as Sankarshna, Pradumna, Aniruddha, Nasimha, and so on. They're all the same Vishnu Tattva, and Sri Krishna is the original source of all of them. And so having that understanding, then people have what's bewildering to human beings is, okay, so Krishna is the source of everything, but he's still moving about in the material world amongst men. Now, how is that happening? Why is that? How can God roam around like an ordinary person? So that is quite bewildering. And then in the last paragraph, it says that is because of the twofold internal and external energies, and the human beings being the marginal energies. Sometimes we come under the influence of the internal energy. Sometimes we come under the influence of the external energy. And through the internal energy, through his internal potency is when he expands into his plenary portions and he takes service from us. And through his external energy is when all his pastimes are performed. So there is that verse, Paritranaya Sadhunam verse in Bhagavad Gita, where it says that Krishna comes to this material world for three purposes: to deliver his devotees, to vanquish the demons, and to establish religious principles. So those are the reasons why Krishna comes to this material world. And so this is the bewildering thing. So, but I've heard also Rompad Maharaj say, and I also say that why is it that God cannot, if God is God, that's why he's able to also come down as a material. He can do anything. He can do anything he wants. Why is it that he cannot come down to the material world and walk among humans? He can do that. I mean, he doesn't even literally have to come. He can do that through his energies, and that's why he's God. When he was born with a four-handed form, but when his parents prayed to him, he immediately came back to the form of a little child. When he showed the universal form, he could do that. He could be the four-handed form, he could be the little child. He could be the universal form, showing Arjuna the universal form. As soon as Arjuna got scared and prayed to him again, he came back to his two-handed form. So that is God, right? That is the power of God. So really, that should not be anything bewildering to us, because there is just one God. He's the source of everything. So there's nothing that Krishna cannot do, or nothing. There's nothing that is beyond his power or his or what he can do. So I think. So this is, I think, what I had. Let me see if I missed out anything. Yeah, this is what I had prepared. So I think I'll stop here and see if anybody has any comments, corrections, additions, anything. Then I would love to hear as well from.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Please accept my obeisances.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Mataji, thank you for that eloquent summarization. And Mataji, one question, especially in the context where you say how one should understand disciplic succession, and there are so many people out there giving so many different kinds of talks, and nowadays with WhatsApp and whatnot, everybody has access to it, right? Meaning it's more propagating. Now, my question is, and I've also got this question from a couple of friends in the past, is whenever we hear to somebody like that outside of the succession and whatnot, but apparently what they said seems to be working for them. Meaning, if they're in distress or if they're becoming a better person or whatnot, apparently that seems to be working. So for a person who feels that it is working for them, how do we explain to them the importance of disciplic succession while that still may be working for them?
It's a good question. I think what we can talk about is what we have heard from scripture and what is working for us and how sustaining it is. So I don't know if for those people it is something that's sustaining or there is, it works one time and doesn't work another time, and they have the basic principles down. I'm not sure. I don't know, but I mean, if it's working for them, I think it's a difficult sell for us to go in and say that, this is our way and this is the only way. And at some point, they have to come to a point where, like they say, right, there are 4 kinds of people who come to Krishna. So if they are in distress or if they're really seeking something, then if they come to us, then it's an easier conversation. But if things are working for them, and I guess we just have to pray for them at that point. I'm not sure, Prabhu. I don't know the answer to this question. I'm just speculating. I'm just saying it off the top of my mind. But if anybody else has anything to say, please.
Hare Krishna. Mataji, please
Hare
accept
Krishna.
my humble obeisance.
Please accept mine too.
All glories to Guru Maharaj.
Glorious.
To Mohanlila Prabhu's question, I'm just thinking how the same Bhagavatam is in the hands of the impersonalists, and they and the Bhagavad Gita, and how they interpret it differently. After this kind of verses, I mean, Bhishma Dev is saying, this is that same Krishna who is the first, the primeval Narayana. How they manage it, Prabhuji, imagine. That is the height of disbelief for me, that the same Bhagavatam, same Bhagavad Gita.
I think if you ask them, if you probably invite them to, if they even want to, that also has to be the Lord's mercy. Invite them to come to one of our lectures or one of our sessions and listen to it. Then maybe, and if they are submissive, it also depends on how they're listening to it, or what they're coming there with a mood of, okay, now let me see, how I can contradict this person based on what I know. Or are they coming in there to really hear the message in a submissive way and take off from it? Then the purity of the speaker will probably work on them. That's the one hope that we have that day. But they also have to have an open heart and hear submissively at that point. There's something we have to do from our part as well. Or purely the Lord's mercy to bring them.
Yes, Mataji.
Thank
Yes,
you.
Not
Mataji.
sure if anybody else.
Thank you, Mataji.
Yeah.
There was one such occasion in, I think, Bhaktivedanta Manor. There is a famous example like that, where the devotee faced the non-devotee, and non-devotee had to face the devotee. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you for that, Ruchira. I think one of the things that strikes me is also in yesterday's lecture, for instance, Rampad Maharaj was talking about one should have the big picture in mind. So depending on where we are in our journeys, and obviously the modes of material nature are hitting us every second, right? Every fraction of a second, 1/20th of a second, we're constantly, moving into areas of danger, and the modes of material nature are acting on us. But unless we have that big picture in mind, it is very difficult for us if we don't have the knowledge, number one. Two, having that implicit faith that Krishna is our supreme shelter, right? Otherwise, we're constantly reacting to the modes. And therefore, we go to the demigods, the public at large is generally conditioned, especially in India. We have 33 crore demigods available and accessible. So we have different asks, different desires that need to be fulfilled, but all on a material plane, and that's all we know. And therefore we go to them and they're obliged. And in many a time, the desires do get fulfilled, and sometimes they don't. And like you said, the sustainability comes into question. So at times they are happy that, the desires, their asks have been fulfilled and everything is going well. So why do I need to change anything? And they move to the next big reversal happens. And then they're down on their knees again, begging for, can you help me out of this mess? And at that point, it may happen, may not happen. The demigod may or may not provide assistance, in which case, people tend to lose faith as well, especially when there are very strong reversals in life. I've seen my own cousins, for instance, lose complete faith in God, in terms of what they can achieve and what they can do about it. And then they go their own way and they do the wrong things. It becomes a slippery slope. So unless one has that big picture in mind and know that my goal in life is to go beyond this common way of living, life as we know it, to what do we want to do beyond that. And that calling happens only after many, 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 many births, right? Bahunam Janmanam Ante, right? So that is something that is a calling that comes, that's mercy that's coming from Krishna. And that comes to us only after many, many lifetimes. It's not an easy thing. We're very, very fortunate. We're down to that less than 1% in this entire world's population, or even the universe's population for that matter, to have that understanding. And then following in the disciplic succession to strengthen that faith. That's what makes the difference.
Yeah.
So, Mohan Leela Prabhu, there's nothing wrong. There are people, even in Trump's support base, for instance, they think Trump is doing a great job, as an example, right? And just to connect it with what we're seeing on a daily basis. They're extremely happy because they're seeing their jobs are okay, their paychecks are okay, they're getting some tax breaks, right? Whatever Trump is doing for them, they're happy. The moment their own, let's say the paycheck gets cut, for instance, they're going to lose faith in Trump. Then what? They're going to go to the next Trump or the next Trump and so on. But they don't see the big picture as to what Trump's actions have. For instance, I'm just picking a name here as an example. It could be anyone for that matter. As a leader, if the leader is not looking at the big picture and setting the right values in place, there will be a point in time when the followers will see that, and then they will be disillusioned by that, and they lose interest in life and they don't know where to go next. Therefore, the leader is very, 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 very important. And therefore, the disciplic succession in our case is such a key thing for us, because they keep us in perspective, and that shelter is always available for us to follow.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think all three of you gave me very important points. Like Ruchira Mataji, you said how that submission is important, and Bhagavatam in wrong hands. And Srila Prabhu, thank you for pointing that big picture. I think sometimes I feel, when so many misleading paths are there, how fortunate we are that somehow we are on the track. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for all three of you. Yes.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Hare Krishna Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances.
Hare Krishna, please accept mine
Thank
too.
you, Prabhu, for bringing out this question, because I was also having the same question in my mind for a longer time. One cousin, the same thing, like, she is struggling. She was struggling. Every time she asks me, but she really appreciates our movement and, whatever we follow, the chanting, everything, deity worship. Every time she asks for help, I try to help her. I really feel like, probably, I'm not pure enough, right? So I tried with different sources. So the distance, I live here and she lives in India. I wanted to help her, like wherever she lives, I arrange some devotees. She goes to the temple, as Sri Vallabha Prabhu says, like, no, time being, whatever she needs, she goes there. That's it. That is done, then come. Even I introduced with couple of devotees so that she can get connected. I don't know, whatever I do, nothing works. Like, one day she's sharing some Bhagavad Gita recitation lecture given by, not from ISKCON, like, of course, something else. She shared, like, can you validate this if I can hear this? I can't even hear more than 2-3 minutes. As you said, like, he started speaking, not even one word using Krishna. Like, all nonsense stuffs he's speaking. How can I validate? I said, like, why can't you hear this? Still, they cannot accept it. What is the, I'm not asking what is the reason, but in what way, even we are trying to connect to the pure devotees, still they don't want to. She's paying for the book distribution. They are distributing the book to her. She feels like, I will pay for it, but she don't want to take the books to home. She feels like, no, I cannot read this. Once they read, when they hear the heart slowly, there we can see some changes, but then they're very stubborn. They don't want to do that, but still they're asking me, like, please, help me. In that situation, I'm totally helpless. What can we do? Like, I was hearing all Sandhya Mataji, Sri Vallabha Prabhu, Ruchira Mataji, but still this situation is very
So
difficult.
I think at least what I feel like in that situation, it's also, we can do as much as we can do. Like Maharaj has said, I hear him say, we can take the horse to the water, but we cannot make the horse drink that water, right? They have to do it themselves. So we can give them all that also, I think, depends on their karma, on where they left off in their previous life. All of those, it's so complicated. All of those things, it ultimately is the mercy of the Lord as well. And and it is also your own karma, where you have left off, what you have done, and or just the causeless mercy of the Lord as well. So we can give her all the resources. What more can we do, right? We can give her you are giving her all the resources. You are putting her in contact with devotees. You are giving her books to read, lectures to listen to. And if she's not able to do that, then, we just have to pray for her at that point. It's like, how much more can you do? I don't know. She has to be submissive. She has to have an open heart. She has to have the right goal in mind. She has to I don't know, like for us, I think for Sri Vallabha and myself, it was just, I don't know, I look at it as just the causeless mercy of Krishna, and how we came in contact with Preeti Mataji and Ashok Prabhu, and they literally dragged us into Krishna consciousness. There's no telling how grateful and how absolutely grateful we are to them for having done that. But we also, I guess, somewhere had an open heart, and somewhere was so vexed with material life and everything that material life had to offer. We were at that point. So it was a combination of everything. It was a combination of the Lord's mercy having brought us in touch with Preeti Mataji and Ashok Prabhu, Preeti Mataji's complete insistence and tolerance and perseverance in making us come to those programs in our house and make sure that we stay on the path. So it was a combination of everything. It's a little of our own heart. It's a lot of the Lord's mercy. It's a lot of Preeti Mataji's perseverance and tolerance. And slowly we got there. So the Lord's mercy is always there. It's just that we stand with an umbrella and we don't get that. Those showers of mercy are raining down on us. We open our umbrella, we stand under it. So that's what she's doing. She's not receiving that mercy from the Lord. She's not opening up her heart enough. Only when there's some distress or reversal, she comes running to you and says, oh my God, now what do I do? So, that's not going to work. But we can pray. That's all I can say.
That's true. I'm at that stage now, totally depending on the Lord. I'm just praying.
Yeah.
I had wanted to really help her. The mercy is flowing, but she's not, opening her heart. She doesn't want to receive that. But still, every time she's crying, because she's my cousin, very close, I feel like, I cannot just leave, it's her karma, right? We wanted to try to help because we are relishing whatever we are doing now, right? Reading.
Right. No, definitely you should share.
Yeah, we wanted to help. But still, when they are like this, it's getting little complicated. The same thing, because they are also quoting same Bhagavad Gita. I'm also reading Bhagavad Gita, but they don't understand. If we even say Bhagavad Gita as it is, what's the difference? I'm also reading Bhagavad Gita. I'm also hearing that. Yeah, it's very complicated.
Yeah, it's difficult. Yeah, no problem. No problem. Hare Krishna. Anybody else wants to add to that? I know this is a thing that we hear, or anything else that you want to talk about. This is difficult.
Hare Krishna, Mathaji.
Hare Krishna.
Such a wonderful, talk from you after a very long time. And, it was also very touching. I also was listening to all the discussion, and it was really good. One of the things, about when we try to reach out and others being stubborn, one of the things I've seen from, my relatives in India is when we say, listen to one guru, listen to one spiritual master, they come back and say, hey, you're just listening to one person. How do we know he's correct or wrong? Whereas I have the choice of picking and choosing whomever we want. And, how India is, there's so many channels everywhere, and they listen one verse from one, person, the other verse from the other person, and they say, hey, I decide which is the best and I take it. This is the extent of arrogance, spiritual arrogance, that they have. And in this, it's very difficult, other than, surrendering to the Lord and say what you have to say and step away. And what I learned from these experiences is it's better. I think it's also there in Shishtakam and the Nectar of Devotion. You don't preach to somebody who knows
faithless.
Yes,
yeah.
So
that's true. That's also an offense to preach to somebody who's faithless. But sometimes we really want to help these people. Yeah, that's another point I was going to say, that if they're completely stubborn and faithless, you probably don't even want to, because we ourselves are not strong enough. So we don't want to be touched by any of that. So we can put them in touch with stronger devotees and have that done. But I think in our state it would be detrimental to even have extended conversations if they are going down consistently down the wrong path. And there was something else that came to my mind while we were talking. It slipped my mind.
Yeah, Mataji. And these things, it's what they are.
Yeah. And this is what I was thinking. I wonder, when they're listening to so many different people, and they're saying that I have this choice of listening to different people and picking and choosing what I want. Now it is all about what they want to hear, right? There's no yardstick, or what are they based? What is the standard that they're comparing it to? Is there the scriptures are the standard? So they don't even understand that. They don't know the scriptures themselves. Like Maharaj says, when you're going to choose a spiritual master, you should already have a base understanding of what Bhagavad Gita says a spiritual master should be, and what you should be looking for in a spiritual master. So like when we have, there should be some standard, right? That they're comparing these lectures or these people who are they hearing from. There should be a standard. Are they speaking from the scripture, or are they just speaking their own whims and fancies? Are they just speaking to satisfy the whims and fancies of the audience so that they can grow their audience? Many people do that. Many so-called godmen just speak to satisfy, not from the scriptures. They just to satisfy their audience, to make them happy in whatever way they were materially happy, they speak. So, if you're intelligent, you would go and compare that to the scriptures to see whether what they're saying matches up with the scriptures. Like this guy who speaks about physics, chemistry, biology, what is he speaking out of, right? Where is he getting all that nonsense from? So, I don't know.
Mataji, actually, the extent of ignorance, is when you may have come across these messages everywhere in social media. When, some of the people say, hey, we are not like other religions. We don't have a book. We are democratic. So these people don't even have a knowledge of what their own religion is, what their
Exactly.
dharma is. There are books, there are scriptures. So, yeah, Mataji. When you say we have descending knowledge, unfortunately, I think that is lost on a lot of.
Yeah. And that's what 4.2 Bhagavad Gita says as well. That has been lost. And so Krishna comes down to reestablish that as well.
Yeah, Mataji. Thank you so much, Mataji. I'll
Thank
let others speak.
Yeah. Is there anything else? We're at 7:45. Lingraj Prabhu, this anything else that anybody wants to say? Otherwise, we can. Okay, I think we can wind up. Thank you very much, everybody. Vancha kalpatrubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavi